Hello, my name is Dylan Katz. Thank you for attending my senior TED Talk. Today we're going to be talking about what the real impacts of artificial intelligence will be. So let's begin with a wonderful picture of a train. This is a train, if you're not familiar. See train. So trains are really interesting in that they had a very drastic impact on the world and the society when they initially were created. The steam engine had such a powerful changing force that it really just, it changed the world forever. The Industrial Revolution, steam engines, all of that stuff has just had a drastic impact. And it's such a complicated device, the train, and there's so many different pieces to it that we need to pull apart. Luckily, some of the research that I did, this guy, Brad Allenby, provided some wonderful information on how to dissect technology and how to evaluate and discuss technology. So Allenby created 3 different levels of technology. The instrumental level, which is basically the core of how something functions, what it does on a mechanical and basic low level. So for trains, it moves people quickly from place to place, and it moves things from place to place. The second level that Allenby discussed was the systems level, which is part of the larger, it's basically whatever this technology is a piece of. So a train is part of the larger system of public transportation, or if you wanted to go for the railway, it's a part of the railway and public transportation. And that's the systems level of a train. However, the impact level is really the most important piece here. The impact level of any technology is really essential, and it's almost impossible to predict what the impact of a technology is before it's created. What the impact level is basically how the world perceives the technology, what people do with that technology, and how it operates. So for trains, they really had a drastic impact on transportation and moving goods over a long distance, and they kind of scared people to begin with. So here's a quote. This is a great quote. If God had designed that his intelligent creatures should travel at the frightful speed of 15 miles an hour by steam, he would have foretold it through his holy prophets. It's a device of Satan to lead immortal souls down to hell. And that was by, of course, the Ohio School Board. So what does this have to do with artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence, well, before we begin with that, let's discuss what artificial intelligence is, because that's an important piece for a presentation about artificial intelligence. So what artificial intelligence is a subset of computer algorithms. It's mathematical systems that allow for self-improving code. And basically, if you have a problem and a solution, you can teach an artificial intelligence algorithm to solve that problem and other problems like it by presenting it with a bunch of different information. These systems are often modeled off of biology, like the human brain or evolution, and they're really, really useful. They're used by companies around the world, companies like Microsoft, Twitter, Facebook, Apple. All of these companies are very heavy utilizers of artificial intelligence. Google uses it for advertisement, which consists of the vast majority of their revenue. Twitter uses it for presenting news items and feed tweets that might be useful for you and might be interested in, and so on. It just keeps going on because this technology is just so widely used. So now let's discuss what it isn't. And this is important too, because it's not evil. As television and movies teach us, artificial intelligence is really able to turn evil and destroy the world, right? But that's not really how it goes. Artificial intelligence is just very simple. It's math, and it doesn't really have the ability to conceive of good or evil, and it doesn't really have the ability to do anything outside of its area of expertise. So a robot that's designed to build staplers can't decide that it wants to go destroy the world or launch nuclear missiles. That's just not really possible. I mean, maybe in the future that's possible, but that's assuming that we don't have any sort of safeguards for this kind of thing, which, given the amount of fear people have for artificial intelligence, seems unlikely. So let's use Allenby's framework for deconstructing artificial intelligence. The instrumental level of artificial intelligence is very simple, similar to the one I gave you earlier. It has the ability to learn, to self-improve, and it solves problems that are given to it. It solves very difficult problems. From the systems level, it's part of a lot of different systems. As I was saying before, companies around the world are using this technology to improve their product, and some products are completely based around artificial intelligence. It's applied to really abstract problems, like digit recognition and handwriting, something that normal computer algorithms are not really able to do. So without that ability to, say, recognize something that somebody has written, you can't really do a lot of things in computers. So artificial intelligence opens up this door where you have a lot more abilities and you have a lot more power. So the impact level of artificial intelligence, because of that power, it's going to have a drastic impact, and it already has begun to. This is really what we should be a little bit worried about, because artificial intelligence has already started destroying jobs. Jobs like truck driving are kind of on the chopping block right now, in that companies around the country are beginning to develop systems for self-driving trucks and automating truck driving and other processes like it. And manufacturing jobs have already taken a huge hit. If you look at this quote from a paper by Michael Hicks and Surikant Devaraj, almost 88% of job losses in manufacturing in the recent years can be attributed to productivity growth. They then continue to state that this was due to automation. You can see this graph down here of manufacturing jobs over time. That's a lot of loss, and 88% of that is a lot. So artificial intelligence has already started to have a really drastic impact on our economy and on our society. What can we do about it? Well, the first option, we can admit defeat. Unfortunately, that's not really an option. Admitting defeat is never an option. So let's look at our other options. We can shift the focus of education to be more abstract and less centered around concrete skills that computers can master, such as really simplistic mathematics. They need to be used for building on top of. However, focusing further into certain topics that can be done by computers seems irrelevant. We can also decouple income from jobs. And I'll get into that in a second. Look, first I want to unpack the education a little bit more. So shifting the focus of education, one of the best ways to do this is to start teaching programming and more creative skills like art and creative writing. These are things that computers can't and probably won't be able to do in the near foreseeable future. And even with machine learning, you can't have a computer do a lot of the things that we can do. And so focusing more into those fields where we can do stuff is great. And educating students using artificial intelligence as a tool. So students will need to be able to use these technologies, and if we teach people how to use artificial intelligence as a tool versus fearing it and letting it destroy their job, then we can actually have artificial intelligence create new jobs and begin to move our world forward while also maintaining a global economy. And focusing further into research and advancing artificial intelligence. So collegiate institutions are really the big players here in artificial intelligence, and they have been for the last 20 years. College research facilities have been the really primary spearheaders of artificial intelligence research. So, decoupling income from jobs. This is interesting. This is kind of a complicated concept, and I'm not entirely sure that it would work, but this is one of the things that was proposed in one of the papers that I was looking at, and I kind of adjusted it. So decoupling income from jobs is really kind of a complicated thing to do, because if you think about why you work, you think about, to get money, right? And the idea that we could potentially have a society where we don't need to work to have money, and we could use these automated workers and artificial intelligence to make products for us and make us money so that we don't have to work is really important, is really great. And if this technology is going to have the impact that we expect it to, we're going to need to be able to move towards a more socialized system where there's a base income for everybody, and there's really simple systems like socialized healthcare and other things. And these are really important because people aren't going to have jobs after a certain amount of time, but there will still be money flowing into companies. So where does the money for those socialized systems come from? Well, it comes from taxes on these companies. It's important for these companies to be developing artificial intelligence and using it. However, these companies are now going to have a lot less expensive labor, meaning that if we tax them more, they can sell their product for the same price or even a little bit less and still make a decent amount of profit, maybe even the same or more. Because of the expense of workers is gone, because the expense of workers is gone, they don't really need to concern themselves with that. So the higher taxes on company income will then flow into the government there, and the government will then distribute it to the people. People will then send it back to the company. As you can see, this kind of decoupling income from jobs is kind of a pretty drastically different system from what we have currently. And there's really only theories about this working or not. So the biggest takeaway here is that we need to change. We need to move our society forward into a world where we are able to learn and change and shift our opinions. We need to have stronger education. We need to have better systems for public health, public care, and general income. A higher minimum wage would be the first step in that direction. These things are really essential to moving forward with artificial intelligence development, which we will need to do if we want to compete on a global scale. So what do? We need to change our systems, like our government and our educational systems, to be stronger and to be more fluid and able to learn. This kind of fluidity is essential. We need to be able to learn like the systems that we've been creating. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Dylan. All right, we'll open it up to questions from our audience and our panel. So I have a sort of two-part question. First, what's the difference between automation and artificial intelligence? And second, where are we currently seeing AI like in our own lives? Like you mentioned, sort of truck driving and manufacturing. Where else are we seeing this sort of, so that we can connect to that a little bit more?
So those are both really good questions. I'm going to start with the first one, which was, what is,
The difference between automation and AI.
Yes. So automation is pretty separate from artificial intelligence. That being said, the improvement of automation is really only done through better artificial intelligence. So automation is having things like robots doing stuff, right? So to have a robot manufacturing something or doing something automatically. However, those systems don't really function well, and they are a lot less efficient if you don't use this artificial intelligence in them. Almost every modern manufacturing system that you're going to be looking at every automated manufacturing system is going to be using artificial intelligence pretty extensively. And then the second question was, how do we see artificial intelligence in our lives from a day-to-day basis? As I was saying, companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, all of those guys are using artificial intelligence to a lot. They're using it a lot. Facebook is using it all over the place. If you go onto their website, they immediately start gathering metrics on what you're doing, and use that, feed that into an artificial intelligence, so it can then decide what the appropriate advertisement for you would be, or whether or not you're a threat to somebody, right? There's certain things like that that can be done. Data analysis is just a lot more effective if you're using artificial intelligence in those kinds of situations where it's difficult to come up with an answer for something, where it's more of an abstract problem, right? So static algorithms have difficult times with problems they haven't seen before. And artificial intelligence is able to adapt and deal with new content and information. Dave?
This was not my original question, but you just brought up something. Mm-hmm. What is the threat that if we start using more artificial intelligence, what is the threat that could be compromised by, so I'll just go with like terrorist organizations? Is that something that we could see in foreseeable future being a problem?
So, I mean, it's hard to say that definitively, but my understanding of artificial intelligence is that it's very difficult to kind of attack them in that way. If you were to gain access to a server that had artificial intelligence on it, you'd be able to do other things like manipulating user data and just stealing information that's stored separately from the artificial intelligence. If you're talking about it from a direct sense of kind of tricking the artificial intelligence, then that's a really interesting concept, and that's actually been investigated in a couple of studies I looked at briefly. There is basically artificial intelligence have similar flaws to what humans have. One of the studies that I saw, somebody used images that were automatically generated to create almost optical illusions for an artificial intelligence, a machine learning algorithm, to make it think that it was something that it wasn't. So there is a risk to artificial intelligence being tricked. But if it's effectively trained, you can also cut it off from learning any more information. And you can train it and deal with it in such a way where you can make it pretty much impossible to do that. So it's pretty uncommon for that to happen. And there's kind of edge cases where that would be possible.
I'm interested in the economics of this, and you're basically suggesting that our economic system is not designed in such a way as to deal with a loss of jobs.
Right.
Right? So how do you see that change happening?
So in terms of the change forward or what's already happening?
That artificial intelligence displacing jobs will require a shift in our economic structure.
Okay.
And what do you think
So-
will lead to that?
So I think the biggest difference between artificial intelligence and past developments like trains is that artificial intelligence requires a lot less workers to do something. So it requires one or two programmers to write a powerful artificial intelligence algorithm that can replace millions of workers. And that kind of thing is really, really kind of concerning, because there's never really been that big of a ratio between one place and the other, or one field and the other field when the fields are shifting. I don't know, did that answer your question?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of unambiguously bad that unambiguously good that we will no longer need a bunch of people to drive trucks,
Right.
That job is handled for us. But that's not working in our society. That would cause a lot of human suffering.
Right.
So, like, what do you think will drive our society to accommodate that and take advantage of the benefit instead of misapplying it as a cost?
So that's a difficult question, and I don't think I can really answer that accurately. I can give you a guess, and that would be the people who are losing their jobs are going to be upset, and there's a lot of people who are losing their jobs, and that kind of unhappiness is going to drive some sort of change. But it's futurism. I can't really accurately predict that.
Okay. You guys look so quiet. Anybody over there?
Come on, guys, I know it's Friday afternoon.
Henry, I have a question.
Thank you, Henry.
So, with all the loss of jobs that, so like you said, like like truck drivers will eventually probably be replaced by self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Do you think that instead, like maybe people will start to want to learn how to code and learn how to design artificial intelligence instead of maybe settling for, I mean, maybe not settling, but instead of maybe going into driving a truck, do you think maybe like, obviously not all of the jobs can be replaced by designing artificial intelligence, but do you think that's realistic to assume that a lot of jobs will be created from artificial intelligence
So
design?
I agree with the first thing you were saying. Basically, artificial intelligence, this displacement is going to force people to shift to more creative jobs like programming. But that being said, I don't know that there's going to be enough jobs. There's nowhere near as many artificial intelligence developer jobs as there are truck driving jobs. Like the ratio is like millions to very few. There's so many truck drivers compared to the number of computer programmers there are. And even so, like these there are people who have driven trucks their whole lives. The chances of getting those people to learn how to program and that kind of massive career shift are really small. So that kind of, I don't know, however you look at it, you're going to be displacing a lot of people. Even if it's just temporary, you still have that issue of there's not an equal ratio of programming jobs to truck driving jobs.
You seem to be focusing mostly on the U.S., and I'm just curious, and I don't know if you've run across this, but like, I was just thinking about sort of the global disruption of this, and the U.S. has like a fairly good education system, and like is fairly wealthy, and seems like we could, if we decided we wanted to retool our economy in this way. Have you found anything globally about what this looks like for countries without those kinds of resources and educational systems where more people than in the US are doing these kinds of jobs, or I'm just thinking of like India as an example, are doing these kinds of jobs that are easily automated.
So that extends pretty far past the extent of my research. I didn't really look into the
Yeah.
globalized impact just because of how wide of a scope that is.
Mhm.
It's going to be different for every country, I'd imagine.
Okay, I was just curious.
There are a lot of programmers in India.
What?
There are a lot of programmers in India.
It's true.
But-
A lot of other people too.
A lot of people.
All right,
Hi.
we good? All right, thank you, Dylan. Step outside for a moment, please.
I mean, that would be